Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Mad Meta Magic, where we're going to make the Magic Meta mad today. Now, take two on this intro because my boom mic disconnected. Oz, I have not forgotten your Dragonstorm request. I will be playing Dragonstorm again soon. I needed to take a break, and I don't feel like I can do Dragonstorm to the fullest potential today. I don't think I'm in the right mindset, because that deck is very mentally taxing. So that will probably be the next Mad Meta. Sorry for the videos being out of order, by the way. I have been playing a lot of Resident Evil 8 to help unplug, and it's been doing a lot of good because I haven't been able to get into a lot of media recently, and so I did not leave myself enough time to record yesterday, so I had to put up the limited video instead of the Mad Meta for the day. So for today's Mad Meta, we're going to be playing SACahills, or SACahills, Pyre of Horrors list, which is basically just Turbo Obliterator, which I can get behind. The only change that I made to his list, or their list, is I added 4 Cavern of Souls over Swamps, because the only thing it can't cast are these cards right here, and it's going to help a lot versus any control matchups we may run against. And it can cast everything else in the deck, because it can tap for colorless for Pyre of Heroes, etc., and everything else is a horror. So Horror Tribal, we have Cabal Therapist, Yarok's Fendlurker. There's a little bit of discard theme going on, although we're probably not going to be using the discard mode on Cabal Therapist all that much. Although I could see Thought Seizing my opponent and seeing they have like 3 of the same card in hand, and then Cabal Therapying them. Phyrexian Rager is just generically good, draws us a card. We have Woe Strider as sort of a repeatable creature from the grave. It makes a chump blocker. We can scry with it. We also have Eternal Scourge, which we can mulligan away with Serum Powder to just have an extra card in hand. Serum Powder going to help increase the consistency of landing a turn 4 Obliterator. Pyre of Heroes, we're going to be upgrading our horrors up into Obliterator. We have Mutavault, which is a horror land. Urborg to make it tap for black. And that's the whole main deck for you. For the sideboard, we have Crippling Fear, so we can name horror, and then all non-horror creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. So it can effectively be a one-sided board wipe for us. We have Leyline of the Void, just as Grave Hate. Damping Sphere is Storm and Tron Hate. Then we have Phyrexian Revoker, which has some utility abilities on a horror, which can make it a good card versus Planeswalker decks, activated abilities. We can't name fetch lands with this like we can name with Pithing Needle, but that's pretty much an edge case. We also have Spellskite, which is a pretty good utility horror. And I think I've gone over everything I need to go over, so I'll see you guys in round 1. Alright, we will be on the play for game 1, round 1. And this hand doesn't do anything for a very long time, so we're going to mulligan. Alright, so we can Serum Powder this away. I think this hand is actually fine to keep if I put back Serum Powder. We can lead on Thoughtseize, play Pyre, then play Eternal Scourge. Alternatively, I could Powder. Let's see, versus a Lurrus deck, I kind of like the Thoughtseize Fatal Push. I think I'm going to Powder. So we're going to put back, I think, Thoughtseize. I mean, it's not the greatest, but we're not doing anything on turn 1, but I'll keep. Lead on Mutavault, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Maybe I should have let on Cavern in case I wanted to play Fendlurker on turn 2. It appears our opponent is probably Mill, if they're playing blue fetch lands and Lurrus. We untap, we draw Thoughtseize, play Cavern, name Horror, and nah, you know what? It's going to be real important if they've got like a Fatal Push or something. So on turn 3, we're probably playing Phyrexian Rager, and this is definitely looking like Mill. Maddening Cacophony. Well, that does turn on our Woe Striders, if we ever get there. Play Mutavault, and we have the option of Eternal Scourge or Phyrexian Rager. I'm going to go with Phyrexian Rager. I want to draw a land. Kind of hoping for an Urborg at this point. It's a Swamp. Pass the turn. Pyre of Heroes, we have to be careful because Pyre of Heroes searches our library, so if my opponent happens to have, I don't know, Archive Trap, we might be in trouble. We untap and draw Pyre of Heroes. So play a Swamp. I think we Thoughtseize. Archive Trap, Crab Cacophony, Snapcaster, Visions of Beyond. I'm going to take Archive Trap from them. Then I'm going to play Pyre of Heroes. Attack for 2. Opponent untaps, they draw. Opponent plays the Crab, plays a land. They can Maddening Cacophony, and they do. So they only have 3 cards left in hand, and they've milled 3 Obliterators. We draw a Mutavault. I cannot activate Pyre of Heroes because of this archive trap. So I think what we do is play Yarok's Fenlurker. We're going to try and tax our opponent's hand. It's not going to work very well because they have Visions of Beyond for next turn. And they could even Visions of Beyond, snap Visions of Beyond, and we're probably screwed. They got rid of Archive Trap? Really? I guess Visions of Beyond, snap Visions of Beyond is good. If that's the case, I think what we'll do... Go to combat. Attack for 2. Let's go get Obliterator. Play Mutavault. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Watery Grave. Untapped. They mill us for 3. Snapcaster Mage. Targeting Maddening Cacophony. They're going to mill us for 8. Last card in hand is Visions. So we untap. Draw a Swamp. Play a Swamp. Let's play Fenlurker. Exile their Visions of Beyond. But if they top deck a land or a mill spell, we lose? This does not bode well for me. Fire up the team. Go to combat. Swing out. 3 cards left in deck. Although, we did powder versus our opponent. So opponent takes 7, goes to 6. What could they draw here? Anything. The answer is anything. They kill us. Sad time. Alright, so we do not want to be playing powder. Basically at all in this matchup. We don't want to use powder. So I think Spellskite for removal spells. Maybe Revoker. Do they have any activated abilities that we need to worry about? I don't think so. Is having a random 2-1 just better? Because we can't name their fetch lands. We can't name Field of Ruin. I could play Leyline because they're playing Snapcasters, I guess. Maybe we don't need Spellskite. Maybe we just bring in Leyline. Run it back. Yeah, if we hadn't powdered, we'd actually probably have won that. If we can go like Thoughtseize into Yarok's Fenlurker, and tax their hand a lot, that's going to give us more time to potentially win the game. So it's not like it's an unwinnable matchup or anything. Alright, this is kind of what I asked for, so I'll keep. Play Swamp, lead on Inquisition. Opponent has Crab, 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 Fatal Push. Well, take the Crab, pass the turn. We are against literal Crabtron. Opponent plays Ruin Crab. We untap. We draw Cabal Therapist. So play a Swamp, Thoughtseize our opponent, take Crab, play Cabal Therapist, pass the turn. I mean, we know what's in their hand, so we might as well actually use Cabal Therapist's ability. We can't name Polluted Delta. This opponent mills us, cracks, and mills us. Okay, they Fatal Push Therapist, which is kind of what I would have named. And they swing 0 to send a message. How rude. We draw a Leyline of the Void, play Yarok's Fenlurker, make them exile. They exile another Fatal Push. Okay. Opponent plays Polluted Delta, mills us. Does not shock Watery Grave, but mills us some more. Plays Maddening Cacophony. We can't escape Woe Strider, and my opponent's about to gain a ton of life. Because this is 5 to escape? Yeah. Alright, let's push, pump, hit him for 2. Opponent's last card in hand is Crypt Incursion. They might just put Lurrus in their hand this turn. They're leaving up Crypt Incursion, okay. We draw Thoughtseize. Well, if I Thoughtseize them, they'll just immediately use Crypt Incursion. So I'm going to cast Leyline of the Void. Okay. Opponent gains 1,000,000 life. Up to 46. We go to combat and attack. And we're only out 1 Obliterator. They untap. They put Lurrus into their hand. We untap. We draw Obliterator. This is not really a choice here. We've got a Thoughtseize. We have to answer Lurrus, because if they get some value back, we're going to be in trouble. Opponent had Fatal Push. Alright. Here comes Obliterator next turn. Opponent draws a card. Come on, land. We untap. We draw Eternal Scourge. Play Obliterator. Pass the turn. Only 9 turns of clock. Opponent plays Field. Cast Damnation to kill Obliterator. I guess that's an answer. We play Eternal Scourge. Pass the turn. Next turn, we can Pyre of Heroes to get a Obliterator. Post-combat. Opponent Visions of Beyond, drawing a card. Plays a Flooded Strand. We untap. We draw a second Leyline. Not super useful. Go to combat. Opponent cracks Flooded Strand. Gets an island. Hit them for 3. Take them to 40. play Pyre of Heroes and turn our 12-turn clock into an 8-turn clock. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent draws and plays a Ruin Crab. We untap, draw second Obliterator, go to combat, attack for 5. Opponent goes to 35. Play Obliterator number 2, pass the turn. Did they get rid of both of our Woe Striders? They did not. Okay. We untap, we draw Phyrexian Rager, go to combat, attack for 10. Opponent doesn't block, goes to 25. Play Phyrexian Rager. Okay, not going to play out Cavern because I don't want my opponent to activate Field. 6 mana. Into the story? They're hard casting Archive Trap. Okay, that's bad. We can play Woe Strider from the grave next turn. Opponent Visions of Beyond. Plays a Polluted Delta, we get milled. Cracks Polluted Delta, we get milled. Cryptid Incursion again? Okay, well we can't do enough damage in 2 turns, unfortunately. And our Grave Hate is one-sided. Ugh. Okay. I mean, it was close. So, like, game 1, we were 1 card in our deck away from winning. So, Phyrexian Rager killed us. Serum Powder killed us. Literally all of those things killed us. But, alright, I'll see you guys in round 2. Alright, round 2, and we're on the play versus Aspiring Spike. I'm gonna keep this. Playing a Yorion deck. Good luck, Spike. Okay, we're gonna lead on Mutavault. Pass the turn. Opponent plays Flooded Strand and passes. Play Urborg. Play Yarok's Fenlurker. Make him exile a card from his hand. Pop that up so we can see what he... Rugged Prairie. Okay, so he's probably playing Jeskai Cleansing Wildfire? Probably. Not 100% on that one. Play Seal of Fire. We untap. We draw Pyre of Heroes. Play Mutavault. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Okay. Play Yarok's Fenlurker. Make him exile another card from his hand. Lightning Bolt. Well, if he doesn't have a counterspell for Obliterator, if we draw Cavern of Souls, he's probably in for a bad time. Unless he's playing, like, actual Hard Wraths. Puts Yorion into his hand. We untap. Draw Cabal Therapist. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Take him to 16. Now, I don't know if he's playing Wraths in the deck that he's playing. If he is, it's a Yorion deck, and he probably isn't playing very many. And he would be 2 turns off of Bring to Light. Yeah, I think we just run out Obliterator. Our clock isn't fast enough otherwise. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They Seal of Fire Phyrexian Obliterator. And have to sack 2 lands? Okay. Obliterator seems good versus his deck. Okay. Alright. I don't really know what's going on. Maybe that means... I could see Revoker or Spellskite being good. I think I'm just going to run it back. I think if we Cavern out an Obliterator and my opponent doesn't have a Wrath, we win. I really like the discard sub-theme going on our low mana curve. We have Cabal Therapists and Inquisitions and stuff. Well, we've got Cavern of Souls, and we've got a Thoughtseize to lead on. No 2-drop, but I think I'm good with this. Opponent plays Scalding Tarn. We untap and draw Serum Powder. So, Thoughtseize you. Let's see what's happening here. Wall of Omens. Oh, it's Invasion of the Giants. Okay. Skyclave Apparition. What does Invasion of the Giants do again? Draw a card, reveal a giant from your hand. When you do, does 2 damage. Next giant cast. So he's got a whole bunch of cantrips. I think we just take Skyclave here. Pass the turn. Probably fetches up a Triome, so then he can play Reflecting Pool with little penalty. Yep. Interesting. Gonna go with Invasion of the Giants. Maximum top deck manipulation. Come on, Yarok's Fenlurker. Nope. Mutavault. Play a Swamp. Pass the turn. Alright. Opponent draws. Does not reveal a giant. They play Prismatic Vista, which is one of the cards we didn't know about. Fetch a Mountain. Second Invasion of the Giants. Lots of top deck manipulation happening here. Then they play a Seal of Fire. We untap. Draw a Swamp. So, play a Swamp. We'll go ahead and play Phyrexian Rager. Okay, we draw Pyre of Heroes. Pass the turn. Invasion of the Giants. So giants cost 2 less. They don't reveal a giant. They play a Plains. They play Wall of Omens. Then they play Wall of Omens. So we no longer know any of the cards in their hand. We untap. Draw Mutavault. Play Pyre of Heroes. Play Mutavault. Activate immediately so that they don't have Seal of Fire. Get Obliterator, pass the turn. Okay. Opponent decreases the cost of Giants this turn and passes. They have Teferi and they bounce Obliterator. They play Emeria? That's kind of interesting, considering how few planes they actually have right now. So we draw Inquisition, but if I cast Inquisition, I can't cast Obliterator. I can play Cavern and then play Obliterator, or I can play Eternal Scourge and upgrade it into an Obliterator. Play Mutavault, play Eternal Scourge, activate Pyre, get Obliterator, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, plays a Mishra's Bauble and cracks it, plays a Rugged Prairie, Skyclave Apparition. Okay. They put Yorion into their hand. And they uptick Teferi. They have Yorion, 2 unknowns, 3 unknowns. We draw Cavern. So play Cavern, name Horror, play Obliterator, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. So they can play Yorion and flicker for a ton of value. They could even flicker Skyclave just to turn our Obliterator into a 4/4 effectively, which I think is reasonable. Yep. So we get a 4/4 token, second Seal of Fire, so they could actually just shoot this illusion down if they wanted to. Okay, Skyclave re-enters. They kill Obliterator. We untap and draw Thoughtseize. Let's go ahead and Inquisition. Just going to gain as much information as I can, but I think I'm scooping here. They have Chandra, Torch of Defiance. All right. Skyclave Apparition is probably the best removal spell they could have. So they do play Planeswalkers, so I think Phyrexian Revoker is probably better than Serum Powder. Maybe a Spell Skite over the last one. Try like that. So we'll be on the play for Game 3. We just need to have a good curve that disrupts what our opponent's doing. The more we can tax their hand early, the better it's going to be in this matchup. Alright, we do have a curve. 1, 2, 3, hopefully 4. I do not want to play Urborg right away, because my opponent can use their fetch lands to just effectively tap for colorless. So we lead on Inquisition. Opponent has 2 lands. Bone Crusher Giant, Invasion of the Giants, and Skyclave Apparition. So Bone Crusher is really annoying, but I think we have to take Skyclave here. Invasion of the Giants could get them to a 3rd land, and without it, they might be stuck. I mean, they're just going to unsummon Obliterators anyway. Let's take Invasion. It's not the greatest, but we should at least be able to get down this Pyre of Heroes. Okay, opponent leads on Scalding Tarn. We untap, draw Phyrexian Rager, play a Swamp, play a Pyre, pass the turn. Opponent does not crack Scalding Tarn. I think either they're probably trying to draw land. Okay, we draw a Swamp, play a Swamp, play Phyrexian Rager. The problem is if my opponent makes it to 3 land, we are probably in trouble, because they just have a whole bunch of answers for us playing 4/4s, or 5/5s. They crack for white, Sacred Foundry, so they're probably stomping here. Brought Back. Oh, this deck list makes sense now. Okay. Well, that really sucks for us. Yep. So I would have felt a lot better had I taken a Skyclave Apparition from them. Yorion Brought Back. Seems good. They have another Brought Back. They play Teferi, they unsummon Pyre. Now they have Stomp for Rager. We draw a Revoker. I don't think that changes our play, though. So, go to combat. We'll attack Teferi first, hopefully forcing our opponent to stomp it. Okay. That makes sense, considering they have another one in hand. Player board. Run out an Obliterator. Okay. They stomp the Rager, untap, and now we're to the part of the game where our opponent's deck just starts winning super hard. So here comes Skyclave Apparition, Lurrus. We're going to play Invasion of the Giants. I mean, presumably they can take some damage for a turn. Opponent gets to scry. We know they're holding Teferi, Skyclave. We draw a Swamp. So I could play like Rager and Revoke Teferi, because they've used their Stomp. They would have to have more removal. Well, start by attacking. Hit them to 8. Let's play Rager. Okay, we get Fatal Push, but we had nothing leave the battlefield this turn, so we can't kill Lurrus. We'll play Phyrexian Revoker and name Teferi Time Raveler. Pass the turn. Okay. So they draw a card, but they can't reveal a giant. They Seal of Fire Revoker, which will let them play Teferi. Oh, they have Seal of Fire for Rager. Oh, they just replay it off Lurrus. Okay, never mind. Yep. So that sucks. Then they play Scalding Tarn. They hit us for 3. We untap and draw Woe Strider. So I can play Woe Strider, sack the Goat and Scry, and kill Lurrus. Which, if I want to kill Lurrus, I have to do because I can't cast things at instant speed. Make a Goat. Sack the Goat. Spellskite, I'm going to put on top. Fatal Push Lurrus. Pass the turn. So they know we're holding at least one Obliterator. They crack Scalding Tarn. You get a Hallowed Fountain tapped. They untap. So Bone Crusher costs 1 for them this turn. If they want to play Bone Crusher. They could just about put Yorion into their hand and play him this turn, though there's not a lot of value here. Oh, they brought back. Okay, I was like, how did they get this back? That makes perfect sense. They brought back Invasion of the Giants. That's actually a sick combo. I like this deck. Spiring Spike usually plays some pretty interesting decks. Okay, so then the Skyclave Apparition, taking out our Woe Strider. We untap, we draw Phyrexian, or we draw Spellskite. So they play Skyclave Apparition. We know they have Yorion in their hand, so they can flicker Skyclave Apparition. So I think I'm going to play out Spellskite and Pyre of Heroes. Pass the turn. They untap. They draw a card. They uptick Teferi to 3. Play Prismatic Vista. Another Skyclave Apparition. So we actually can't beat this, because we have no way to kill these Skyclave Apparitions. If I had known that the deck that they were playing was more creature-centric, I would have brought in the Crippling Fear. So if opponent wants to leave us with a 2/2, they can flicker an Apparition. But now it seems like they would be basically out of answers for an Obliterator. I mean, they flickered Teferi, so they can just get him back. Or they can just bounce the Obliterator for a turn. We have no answer to Teferi. Okay, they're going to take out Spellskite. Yep, and they get to Scry. We untap and draw Woe Strider, which is only marginally worse to Teferi, but, I mean, play Obliterator, but we don't have any way to deal with the board. Yeah, I should have brought in the Crippling Fear. That was a huge sideboard mistake on my part. I figured it was some sort of control, because Aspiring Spike is known to play like Cleansing Wildfire, Tail's End, Lotus Field control sometimes. And I thought that maybe this was just like a Yorion upgrade to that, but it's not. And so I don't even think that with that tech I would necessarily be winning here. The opponent hits us for 4 in the air. Oh, they can just unsummon Yorion and replay him. Just keep getting like infinite value. That's so strong. That's way stronger than what I'm doing. I'm glad to see Brought Back actually make it into a deck, though. And like a deck that seems like reasonably capable of abusing it. More than just fetch lands. Because my only ideas for Brought Back were less than good. Yeah, why not unsummon Yorion and replay him? Then you get to exile the Obliterator, you leave me with a useless token, you get to get all your stuff back on Teferi. Oh, never mind. My opponent can just play whatever they want from any zone now for basically whatever amount of mana they choose. Yeah, we're toast. Yep, GG's. Deck was sick, though. Alright, we will be on the draw for round 3. And I think this is an okay hand on the draw. I'd like to draw another black source so we can play Yarok's Fenlurker, but we can play Pyre of Heroes on 2 if we have to. And it looks like we're against Turbo Red, because Foundry Street Denizen means there's going to be a lot of creatures headed our direction. Okay. If opponent plays a mountain, is this going to be like Goblin Guide Legion Loyalist? Oh, worse, it's Burning Tree. Burning Tree Emissary. Then a Mog Fanatic. I mean, that's not the craziest opener I've seen out of red. But we're taking 3. Untap, we draw a Swamp. So play a Swamp. Play the Fenlurker. Just to tax their hand and battlefield a little bit. They'll probably use Mog Fanatic to ping Fenlurker here. Otherwise, we'll be blocking the Foundry Street Denizen. We get Ramanop Ruins out of their hand. If we land an Obliterator early enough, there's like nothing they can do. They would have to Goblin Grenade us to death, likely. Okay, they Mog Fanatic Yarok's Fenlurker, as predicted. The question now is, do we risk losing a life on Rager, or do we play Woe Strider and have 2 blockers? I think we go Woe Strider. Okay, opponent does have Goblin Grenade. We go to 9. We draw Pyre of Heroes. So, play a Swamp. Play Woe Strider. Make a Goat. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They have Lightning Bolt for Woe Strider. Okay, then they go to combat. Attack for 2, we chump, stay at 9. We untap and draw Swamp. So play Mutavault, play Phyrexian Rager, draw a card, lose a life. Another Yarok's Fenlurker. Pass the turn. If my opponent attacks, we trade. If they don't, we're going to upgrade this into an Obliterator. And if they have a Lightning Bolt, then we're going to be sad. Opponent decides against trading. We draw Obliterator. That is slightly better. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Play Swamp. Play Obliterator. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. And concedes. Wow. Get him, Obliterator. Okay. So we definitely want Spellskite here. We definitely want Crippling Fear. And I think we're going to go ahead and cut the Serum Powders. And I'm going to cut Thoughtseize. Yeah, okay. We'll cut a Thoughtseize. Hand Disruption's nice, but we can't be paying that much life. He says keeping a hand of all paying life. Okay, opponent leads on Mountain. Legion Loyalist. We get hit for 1. Come on, Fenlurker. Mutavault. Lead on Swamp. Let's go ahead and Inquisition. Burning Tree, Bolt, light up the stage. Take, light up the stage. If my opponent top decks a land, they are a god. Second Legion Loyalist. We get hit for 2. Untap. We draw Cabal Therapist. Well, Thoughtseize our opponent. Take Lightning Bolt. Play Cabal Therapist. And if they don't bolt, they're going to lose all of their Burning Trees. Opponent untaps. Worst case scenario is they top deck a land and go Burning Tree, Lightning Bolt, Cabal Therapist. Okay, opponent attacks. We're not going to block. By blocking, we would prevent 1 damage. Yeah. Sack Cabal Therapist. Target our opponent. Name Burning Tree Emissary. They have Goblin Grenade and Lightning Bolt left, which is a lot. Play Mutavault. Play Rager. Draw Swamp. Pass the turn. They bolt the Rager. They have exactly Goblin Grenade left in hand. They drew a land. They hit us for 2. We go to 10. We untap, draw Swamp, play Mutavault, pass the turn. Opponent untaps and draws a land. They go to combat. No attacks. We untap, draw Swamp, play a Swamp, play Rager. We draw Fatal Push. That's good. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They Goblin Grenade us. This is probably like light up the stage. Double Goblin Grenade. Oh, punished for not pushing the other one. Alright, you got me. Fair and square. I don't think it was correct to push there. Maybe it was, but we definitely got punished for not doing it. Run it back for game 3. We're on the play. Alright, we got Therapist, push, Yarok's Fenlurker. Honestly, I might just Therapist their Burning Tree Emissary. Just blindly. Opponent starts Mountain, Mog Fanatic. Immediately kills Therapist. Alright, we untap. We draw Yarok's Fenlurker. Play Fenlurker. They lose a card from their hand, at their choice. Alright, so they lose Ramanop Ruins. They untap. They play a Mountain. Foundry Street Denizen. And Goblin Guide. Okay. So they go to combat. Goblin Guide's going to attack here. Goblin Guide finds us a Cavern of Souls. No blocks. Take 2, go to 18. We untap. Draw another Fatal Push. Play Yarok's Fenlurker. Exile another card from their hand. Claim the Firstborn. Alright. Pass the turn. They untap. They play a land. Second Goblin Guide. Powers up the Denizen. They go to combat. Attack and attack. Top of our deck is a Phyrexian Rager. I think I am going to risk the double block for a trade here. If they have Lightning Bolt, they can save their guide. But that's a whole bunch of damage that wouldn't be going at us in that case. Rager's an excellent top deck. We're at a high enough life total that the 1 life loss shouldn't matter. And my opponent is basically out of resources now. So play Rager, draw Rager, and I'm going to go ahead and just push this. No more Goblin Grenade shenanigans for you. Opponent untaps. And scoops. Alright, well we can beat Turbo Red. On to round 4. Alright, we are on the draw for round 4, and this is a pretty awful opener, so I'm going to powder. I'm actually going to keep this. It's not great, but we are on the draw. We have several things we can do on turn 1. Opponent leads on Spire Bluff into Soulscar. So they are Blitz. We draw Obliterator, which is not what we want to draw. Inquisition them. Manamorphose, Mutagenic Growth, Lightning Bolt, Expressive Iteration. No second land. Take Expressive Iteration. Pass the turn. If they miss on drawing a land here, we might... never mind. I was going to say, we might be able to Therapist the Manamorphoses away. So, Manamorphose number 1, red-blue. Manamorphose number 2, the blue-red. Manamorphose number 3, into blue-red. Bolts our face. Attacks for 5. Then Mutagenic Growthing to 8. Yep. 2 cards left in our opponent's hand. Swamp, please. There we go. Play the Swamp. Play the Fenlurker. They lose a card from their hand. Lightning Bolt. Nice. That probably means their last card is also a Lightning Bolt, or it's like an Expressive Iteration. They shock a land, probably cycle Fiery Islet. They do. They play Swift Spear, and are attacking for 2. I don't think it's worth chumping here. We untap and draw Thoughtseize, which I'm not brave enough to cast. Play Mutavault. Play Eternal Scourge. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Expressive Iteration, which is an amazing top deck. Opponent exiles Scalding Tarn, so they do find a land. They crack Scalding Tarn for a mountain, and they attack. They almost certainly have a spell. The problem is we've got a block. Like, we have to here. And I think we just double chump. We could technically try and double block the Soulscar Mage so that Obliterator gets better. They have Mutagenic Growth. Okay. Well... that's fine, I guess. We untap land. No, that's an anti-land. That's the opposite of a land. I don't want to Thoughtseize. Play Eternal Scourge. If we drew a land there, we might have stood a chance. Opponent untaps. Never not draw gas. Opponent attacks. Oh, my mistake. I thought I would be alive. Doesn't matter what we block, we still die. Yep. We would have been dead even if we got to play Obliterator there. It's ridiculous. So, Crippling Fear's coming in, though I think it's too slow. Damping Sphere, like, they'll have their hand empty, and we will be dead prior to that becoming relevant. I'll drop 1 Eternal Scourge in the Serum Powders, and we'll play it like this. Alright, I'd like to play first. We can lead on a Thoughtseize. We technically have a Curve and Removal. If we draw a 3rd land, we're basically fine, because we can start drawing extra cards with Phyrexian Rager. I'm not saying this deck deserves to beat Blitz, but I'm getting real tired of how efficient Blitz is. Because they cast, like, 7 spells by turn 2. And I'm no math magician, but they should only have 3 mana total that they have gotten to use by then. And they still end up having, like, 5 cards in hand after the fact. Okay, so Swamp, Thoughtseize. Let's see, Sprite Dragon, Manamorphose, Wild Slash, Lightning Bolt, Opt. I think we take Sprite Dragon. The rest of their hand is irritating, but we don't have a real good answer, and that's their only consistent source of damage. Like, I have Fatal Push, but opponent top decks creatures. Play Cavern, name Horror, Fatal Push Soulscar, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Fiery Islet. Like, what am I supposed to do? I mean, like, they play, like, 16 threats, so I guess it's not wholly unreasonable, but it sometimes feels that way. Wish I'd have drawn a land, but unfortunately I did not. So play Fenlurker, make our opponent exile a card from their hand. It's Wild Slash. They untap. They play Swift Spear, have Lava Dart. They can't flash it back, though. We untap. We draw a Swamp. Play a Swamp. Inquisition. Do we take the card draw, or do we take the Lightning Bolt? I think we take the Lightning Bolt, because that Lightning Bolt with 2 prowess triggers is effectively a Lava Axe. And while Manamorphose is incredibly dangerous, like, they could always just top deck a land, Manamorphose into a land, and then Fiery Islet into a spell to kill us. Like, I don't know. I am, like, super not thrilled at the moment. I pointed this out in my Discord, link in the description below, by the way, if you want to join. It's free to anybody. I pointed this out in my Discord last night, but apparently Modern Horizons 2 in the announcement says that the complexity and power level is higher while bringing more of what people enjoyed from Modern Horizons 1. And I'll be completely honest, I am terrified by that statement. Because Modern Horizons has, I think some of the top cards in the format are from exclusively Modern Horizons. So you've got like Force of Negation, Renin 6, Seasoned Pyromancer, like, oh, and a Vapor Snag. You can play that this turn. Okay, we take 6, untap. We draw Obliterator with 1 less land than we need. Play Rager. I have no idea what the last card in their hand is. We draw Thoughtseize, pass the turn. Basically, no matter what, we have to block. Opponent plays Bloodstained Mire, cracks Bloodstained Mire, gets a Mountain. Another expressive iteration. Well, that's probably death. Yeah, they exile Lightning Bolt. So, man, I want them to print a card that's like, make it a black-white card or something. But it's like, if your opponent has cast 4 or more spells this turn, destroy all creatures and end the turn. Like, just give me that. Make it uncounterable. I'll see you guys in round 5. Alright, we are on the play for round 5. And I'm going to keep this hand. I'm not going to powder this. It's effectively a 6, but we have Inquisition, Cabal Therapist, Fatal Push, and Phyrexian Rager. Play a Swamp, Inquisition, and it's Burn. So we take... Oh man, it's too bad we can't Cabal Therapist Searing Blaze, right? Take Eidolon from them, pass the turn. Opponent probably going to play Inspiring Vantage and then suspend Rift Bolt. Yep. We untap. Draw another Swamp, play the Swamp, play Cabal Therapist, pass the turn. Rift Bolt coming off Suspend. They Rift Bolt us. They play Scalding Tarn, they crack it, they get a Mountain, Searing Blaze. Yep, we untap, draw Phyrexian Obliterator, play a Mutavault, which pains me when I have a Quadra Black card in my hand. Draw Swamp, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, plays an Eidolon, we untap, draw Eternal Scourge. So play a Swamp, Fatal Push, take damage, play Eternal Scourge, go to combat, hit them for 2. Opponent untaps, they play Arid Mesa, they crack it, so they could Searing Blaze and Skewer the Critics this turn. They exile Eternal Scourge, play a Goblin Guide, and attack revealing Yarok's Fenlurker. So I can only play one thing this turn, and it's probably Fenlurker. We exile Skewer the Critics, so whatever they have left in their hand is better than that. Attack them for 2. I'm probably going to use Mutavault as a blocker here. Okay, I definitely am. They go to combat. They attack. We reveal a card we can't cast. Animate Mutavault. And they Boros Charm us to 2. So block here, block here. Opponent has no cards left in hand. 1 Goblin Guide. We untap. Draw Obliterator. Play Eternal Scourge. Pass the turn. But we're just dead. We can't beat Burn at 2 life. No reason for our opponent to attack. We draw Mutavault, play Mutavault, go to combat, attack them for 3. Opponent goes to 11. Oop. Play Serum Powder, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw, play Sacred Foundry tapped, no attacks. We untap, draw Cavern, name Horror, play Obliterator, animate Mutavault, go to combat, swing with the team. So they have to basically hit a land this turn. Oh my gosh, we got there. I lied. We can beat Burn at 2 life. It's just not likely. So Crippling Fear, Revoker, Spellskite in. Thought Seizes go out, along with probably some powders. Actually, all the powders, I think. Run it like this. So this time the opponent is on the play. We got 1, 2, 3, and a Fatal Push, so I'm going to keep. Opponent leads on Mountain into Swift Spear. We untap. Draw Swamp. Play Swamp. Play Therapist. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays a Sunbaked Canyon. Searing Blaze. Sure. Head us down to 14. We untap and draw Pyre of Heroes. Play a Swamp. Play Fenlurker. Exile a card from their hand. Rift Bolt. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps, plays a Mountain, plays a Goblin Guide, and Lava Spikes us. They only have 1 card left. It's another Lava Spike. They attack, we chump, we go to 6. We draw Eternal Scourge, play a Swamp, play Eternal Scourge, pass the turn. And if we make it to next turn, we can have an Obliterator. They cycle Sunbaked Canyon, they play Inspiring Vantage, and suspend Rift Bolt. No attacks. We untap and draw Cavern. So I can either play an Eternal Scourge and leave up Fatal Push, Or I can play Pyre of Heroes and pot out for an Obliterator. If I go for the Obliterator play... Okay, we're going to go to combat and attack. See what our opponent does. Nothing. Okay. Get Obliterator. Pass the turn. So they can bolt us to 3, and as long as they don't draw another bolt, we're fine. If they just top deck lands for the rest of the game, we're good. Nope, Boros Charm. Okay. Well, next turn we were going to get another Obliterator, and we'd probably be in a fine spot, but... Alright, run it back. We are on the play for Game 3. We have Crippling Fear, we have Pyre of Heroes, but we're not doing anything on turn 1. I think this is okay. So we will have a board wipe for non-horror creatures. We can play Rager to redraw. Maybe I needed to keep a hand with, like, Inquisition or something. Okay, opponent did mulligan to 6. That gives me a brief glimmer of hope. Play Cavern, name Horror. Pass the turn. Opponent plays Inspiring Vantage, Swift Spear. We untap and draw Fenlurker, which is excellent. That's a better play than Pyre here. So play Fenlurker, exile a card from their hand, Lava Spike. Opponent plays Arid Mesa, gets a Mountain into an Eidolon, and attacks for 1. We'll take it. Untap, we draw Woe Strider. So play Urborg, and we are going to play Phyrexian Rager here, because we really want to draw a 4th land for this Crippling Fear. That is not a 4th land. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Sunbaked Canyon. Searing Blaze to kill Rager. They attack for 4. I am going to block. Come on, land. There's the land. So opponent only has 2 cards left. Let's go ahead and Crippling Fear, because it's the only spell we can cast without losing additional life. This isn't like a Spirit Horror or anything, is it? Okay. So name Horror. Pass the turn. Okay, we get bolted down to 7. Opponent untaps. Cycles Sunbaked Canyon. Plays a land. Passes. They may have Searing Blaze. We draw Phyrexian Rager. Oh, man. I want to play Phyrexian Rager to try and draw another land, but if I do and they have Searing Blaze and they're holding another land, that's a problem. So the best thing I can do is just play Woe Strider here. And they have Bolt for us. We just have to dodge Boros Charm or 2 burn spells. They play a land, they cycle Sunbaked Canyon, we untap, draw Fatal Push, play Pyre of Heroes, go to combat, hit them for 3, they go to 13, activate Pyre, get Obliterator, pass the turn. Opponent bolts us to 1. We're dead to everything. Almost. Yep, looks like they had it. It was a Boros Charm. I think they were slow rolling that, or they just top decked it. Either way, that sucks. Let me bring up the deck list really quick. I have some notes, but nothing too useful, I don't think. Okay, so Pyre of Horrors. I really like this deck. I don't think it's good, but I like it. I love playing tribal decks that we can make work. I like playing Pyre of Heroes, and most of all, I love Phyrexian Obliterator. This deck is set up to be the most consistent Phyrexian Obliterator that you can play in Modern. And if that's your goal, play the deck. The problem is, Phyrexian Obliterator is not a good threat anymore. And the reason that I say that is in a pre-Fatal Push world, so when the only thing you had to worry about playing an Obliterator was a Wrath or a Path, Phyrexian Obliterator still didn't see play. Like, it was kind of fringe at the time, and it is great. Versus aggressive decks, it's hilariously strong, because what are they going to do? Attack? You just don't attack. The problem is, in a post-push world, the colors that are aggressive, which tend to be red and black, now have access to push. They have access to non-damage based removal. Even the Dimir decks that exist now, they're playing Fatal Push, they're playing Drown in the Loch, they're playing Bloodchief's Thirst. There's a lot of CMC based destruction that is cheap, efficient enough to actually see play, and it makes Obliterator worse. I think a better way to abuse Obliterator, if you want to play Obliterator deck, like, I'm not saying this is going to be a better deck than this, because I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think, for funsies, I would love to play a deck that plays like hunted horror. So you give your opponent like centaurs or something like that, and then you make Obliterator fight them. I think that would be hilarious. I don't know if it'd be good, but that's something that I'd love to see somebody try. And if it seems consistent, I would play it. This deck does have some merits. And honestly, we're just a couple of good horror creatures away from maybe having a horror tribal deck. There are a couple of good horror creatures we're not playing right now. So there's Despoiler of Souls, which is a recurring grave threat. So like if you were playing a grindy matchup versus a control deck, you could Despoiler of Souls back from the grave, and then you could Pyre of Heroes it into one of your powerful 3-drops, that sort of thing. You could restart the pod chain kind of a deal. There's, of course, Ravenous Chupacabra, which, if this was a bigger deck and there was more slots, I think I would run in addition to Obliterator, because just having an occasional murder that you could tutor up off of Pyre of Heroes, I think would be good. There's also some more slightly fringe playable stuff, like there's Fume Spitter and a couple of other random mono black horrors that have some utility, but I don't think they're as efficient as the cards that are in this deck. The problem is I want to play a Pyre of Heroes deck like it's a pod deck, and none of these cards obviously synergize with Pyre of Heroes. Pyre of Heroes is basically here as a tutor for Obliterator to put it into play, which is fine. That's a strong thing to do. I just don't think it's strong enough. If Yarok's Fenlurker was a bear instead of a 1/1, I think this deck would actually be a lot better. I really like the discard synergy that we have with like Inquisition on turn 1, Yarok's Fenlurker, which is a creature, and then taxes your opponent's hand on turn 2. I think that's excellent. Some of our strongest hands were that. Because if you like Inquisition their removal, and then you play Yarok's Fenlurker, and then you like Cabal Therapist, occasionally you can just nuke a couple of cards. Cabal Therapist is not as good as Cabal Therapy, but I think it is the best 1-mana horror that exists in Modern. And we got some good plays out of it, like versus the Turbo Red Goblin Grenade deck. Like, we actually got 2 cards with Cabal Therapist, which felt amazing. Just 1 mana, discard 2 cards. 2 good cards, by the way. Felt really great, and the second time we played it, our opponent had to remove it because they knew what we would name, and it was going to be a problem for them. Phyrexian Rager, I have always liked Phyrexian Rager as a card. Just 3 mana, it's a bear, it draws you a card. Like, the makings of this kind of weird tribal attrition deck are here, but we need another horror that interacts with discard somehow. Like, if instead of Eternal Scourge, which Eternal Scourge I think is just the best, it's the Xth best horror, where X is the cutoff for making this deck. I think if there was a 3-mana discard horror or another 2-mana discard horror, this deck would be a lot better, because then you are Inquisition Thoughtseize, Cabal Therapist on turn 1, Yarok's Fenlurker, or this theoretical card I'm talking about on turn 2, into drawing extra cards on turn 3 off of Phyrexian Rager into Obliterator. That is a line that I could see being powerful enough to see play in Modern, and actually be like, I think tier 2, maybe a little bit more fringe. I think if Phyrexian Revoker was more powerful in Modern, if there was a lot more activated abilities that we had to shut off early, you could make an argument that Phyrexian Revoker is that creature, but there's not. There's too many. All of the cheap activated abilities in Modern are mana or basically just mana abilities. Like, you have mana dorks, you have stuff like that. So Phyrexian Revoker, actually, can Phyrexian Revoker shut off mana abilities? It can. So if we were playing against a lot more like Birds of Paradise, Gilded Geese, Llanowar Elves effects, then maybe we could play Phyrexian Revoker. But that's not how the metagame is right now. If there was more like, if there was a 2-mana horror that had Smother attached to it, or like a Faceless Butcher effect that was cheaper, or I don't think this card is Modern legal, and I don't think it's a horror. But let me check. It is a minion, and it is not Modern legal. But if there was like a Bone Shredder effect, like maybe. But that sort of effect just doesn't exist in Modern yet. And maybe with Modern Horizons 2, we'll get a good horror or two. Maybe we'll get one that recurs from the grave, like a la Bloodghast or something like that, and we'll get some better synergy with Pyre of Heroes. Such a thing is possible, and in fact, probable if given enough time. Sideboard, I don't think Crippling Fear is the board wipe for us. It's not bad. I just think it's a little bit too slow. I think we are better off with playing Bile Blight, playing Eliminates, or maybe even like Dismembers or Disfigures, just as additional cheap removal. Having a Wrath in the 4-mana slot, even though it's one-sided, is not like playing Whip Flare in Affinity. The cost is just too high. I think we need to find some other way. Like Force of Despair might do it, because Force of Despair, you have to give up 2 cards, but if your opponent plays 2 or more creatures inside of a turn, you can tap out for your big threat. You can discard a card that you're not playing. Because one thing that I do like about this deck is that the mana curve is really tight. So like on turn 1 we play a 1-drop, on turn 2 we play a 2-drop, on turn 3 we play a 3-drop or a 1 and a 2, and on turn 4 we either play 2 2-drops, a 1-drop and a 3-drop, or a 4-drop. And really it didn't feel like I was dropping that much mana the entire league. I felt like I was curving out the vast majority of the time, and most of the time that I wasn't, I kept a bad hand or I didn't draw lands. So I think if you played Force of Despair out of the side, that could help a lot versus creature decks, because you're going to be tapping out for stuff anyway, and you might be able to just have a gotcha moment against your opponents. It might give you the extra edge that you need, because Crippling Fear, we only cast once, and yes, I should have brought it in versus Aspiring Spikes deck, but could you imagine Force of Despair versus that deck that he was playing? Just like, oh, you brought in, or you Yorioned in 2 Wall of Omens, Skyclave Apparition, Yorion entered the battlefield this turn, just like wipe your board. That would be pretty sick. And versus the red aggressive decks, it would be good. Versus Blitz, it would be decent because they play like multiple 1-drop threats in a turn, and it's a way to recoup card advantage. It's a way to recoup the disadvantage you gain by playing it. Leyline of the Void, by not being Relic of Progenitus, actually lost us the game versus Mill. Not that we were in any way favored to win that. I think that matchup is like probably like 15-85 Mill's favored. But the fact that we didn't exile stuff out of our own grave with Leyline, our opponent was just like, okay, yeah, sure, Crypt Incursion gains 60 life. What are you going to do? And it's like, well, I have to beat down with a 5/5, and so it's a 12-turn clock. Like, that sucked a lot. I'm not sure there's a way we can get around that. Like, maybe we just need to be thought seizing it. But I think if you're playing this deck, it might be worth, instead of playing Leyline of the Void, which is only good in your opener, and I know, like, Leyline of the Void is in theory better because we're playing Serum Powder, so if we're playing against Dredge, we have extra mulligans to try and find Leyline of the Void while also having a hand that does anything, and there's merit in that. And if you're running into a lot of Dredge and you wanted to build this deck simply because you had the cards and you're playing it in a local metagame, maybe you're playing it at F&M, I think that'd be totally fine. But unless Dredge is the top deck, most other forms of Grave Hate, like Nile Spellbomb, Tormod's Crypt, Relic of Progenitus, are going to be about the same. And I feel like the Serum Powder mulligan portion of this deck is probably the weakest part of the deck. I think it's only in here because of Eternal Scourge and the Leyline synergy. So I would like to see Serum Powder dropped out of the main deck. Eternal Scourge, like I said, is probably the worst horror in the deck, but there's not a lot of good replacements for it, especially in the 3-drop slot, especially that, you know, the fact it recurs. And I would like to see Leyline maybe become Nile Spellbomb or Relic. Maybe we even play Phyrexian Revokers in the main deck and just, you know, try and have some gotcha moments or like a Spellskite or two, despite the fact that it's not aggressive at all. That probably means this card needs to remain in the sideboard. Other than that, like, there is not a lot of, like, good horrors. Because the problem with horrors is either they are more expensive than Obliterator and way worse, or they are relatively cheap and just don't do anything. I think it's interesting that Obosh is a horror, but like it doesn't do anything for the horror synergy. Void Beckoner is way too much. Chupacabra I already mentioned. Like, actually, Gluttonous Slug might work. It kind of fits the aggressive portion of this. And if we're potting, we might have multiple creatures enter the battlefield. So maybe we can like lean into a more aggressive version with Gluttonous Slug. Horror of the Broken Lands, I don't think the cycling's worth it. Dinrova Horror jumps the curve way too high. Yeah, we're not exploring for Lurking Horror. We're not cycling for Vile Manifestation. I just think that a lot of the horror creatures are just too slow, unfortunately. Or too narrow. There's not really a lot of inter-horror synergy. Most of the creatures that are horrors do not care about creatures being horrors. So, yeah, I would try the Gluttonous Slug line along with maybe bringing Revoker into the main, dropping Eternal Scourge Serum Powder, and just seeing if you can get a decent enough aggressive clock with like a Phyrexian Obliterator top end / way to end the game. I think that would be the best way to go on this. So, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined. And remember, you can follow me on Twitch, same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, though the last few times have been earlier than that. And yeah, you're all wonderful human beings. SACahills, I hope you enjoyed me playing your deck. I'm sorry I didn't do better with it, but I tried. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of May. If you want to support my channel directly and have your name show up in this list, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below. Thank you all.